guys, it's Sam, and today I'm going to be talking about books about books. Books featuring magical books. These are all fantasy series because that's the kind of vibe I'm talking about. So books that feature magical books or about books in some capacity, and my favorites. I've read more than this, but these are the ones at the top of the list for me. And this video topic was inspired by two books that I read recently about books. So I'll talk about those first, and then some of my classics. First is Blood Ink Sister Scribe by Emma Tirza. This is a standalone adult fantasy story that follows primarily a family who are a small keeper family of these magical books. These books are books that there are people who can write them, those are scribes, there are people who can read them and sort of detect them, and they have magical energy to them, and essentially the reading of them, the books as a thing are spells in and of themselves and can defy the laws of nature and things. So this book is really intriguing because it's about the books and it's taking place in our world where these books just exist, and then it has the character dynamics of these sisters who are actually half sisters and their family dynamics and their abilities and how they impact those things. And then there's another character who's also part of the larger society of these people who know about books, and he comes into play too, and so you get a really well-rounded view of these small-time collectors, and then also people who are trying to run things using these books, and how dangerous these books can be and all of that. So books about magical books. I especially like it when the books are dangerous, and this is one of those. Then we have Infinity Alchemist, which is another book that I read recently. This is following a character who wants to be an alchemist but isn't because you have to go to a certain school, and he discovers that he's kind of connected to a really powerful alchemist. He ends up teaming up with a professor, a very newly professed a new professor who's close in age to him, about trying to find this specific book, because this specific book is very powerful, and everything kind of goes from there. There ends up being a polyamorous love triangle in there, which is very fun and queer and interesting, but it is also another one where there's this book that's dangerous, there are other people trying to get this book, there's a race to the book, and the book can do lots of things and has lots of very powerful spells and things in it. So this is a duology. The first book is out. The second book is not quite yet, but soon. I think it comes out this fall, potentially. So looking forward to the conclusion of that series, but the book stuff is definitely really cool. Now some oldies but goodies. We have Mr. Penumbra's 24-Hour Bookstore by Robin Sloan. This is one of the first audiobooks that I ever read, so definitely holds a fond place in my heart, but this is about a man who gets a job as a bookstore clerk. He starts working for this bookstore, or gets introduced to this bookstore, and it's a 24-hour bookstore that ends up having a magical sort of society attached to it of people who are obsessed with these books, and it becomes it's a secret society. So this bookstore's open 24 hours. There's parts in the back that are these different books that all have clues. So it's almost like a Ready Player One-esque mystery without all of the nerd ego stroking bullshit that is in Ready Player One, with book stuff instead of nerd culture stuff, video game type stuff. And so you have this group of people who are trying to figure out the mysteries of this book society. And so yeah, you have these magical books, but they're not quite magical maybe, but they kind of are, and there's a mystery behind the books. So you're trying to discover that with the characters, which is very fun. Then you have arguably my top three in the genre. We have Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. This is a standalone fantasy, YA, but upper YA fantasy, about a woman who is guarding these magical books that are literally dangerous. She guards a magical library where the books are sentient, and there's different levels of book, and some of them are just oh, well, they're sentient and they are a problem, but they're not a huge problem. Some are if they get released, they basically turn into demons and go on rampages. They're terrifying books. And so yes, there's things that are the content of the books, but the books themselves are sentient. And she ends up having to team up with a sorcerer who, I think this, if I remember it right, the sorcerers in here are people who make the books, or they have the sorcerers are not supposed to be good or whatever. And so she has some conflicting feelings about that, and they have a little romance and stuff because, YA fantasy, but super fun. I really enjoy Margaret Rogerson's worlds and atmosphere and stuff, and so a magical book with evil books, magical library that's dangerous, totally a vibe. Then we have the Magician's Trilogy by Lev Grossman. This is less about the books being magical in the same way, but I still think is warranted, because we have this whole thing being there's books that this character at the beginning of the story is familiar with and doesn't realize that they can be like a real place. Like they're almost like this like Narnia-esque book series that he like really loves, and then realizes that it's like a real place when he goes away to a magical college. So it's, there's a lot. This is not quite like the show. This is based on, like the show is based on this, but these I would say are darker. And yeah, it takes a lot of the fantasy tropes and spins it on its head in a very satisfying way. This is a very satisfying series, in my opinion. Dark, not perfect for the characters, incredibly satisfying. But yeah, so we have this like the books being a very important part of this world because the books become the world, you know? And last but not least is The Starless Sea by Aaron Morgenstern. This is about a man who discovers a book and discovers that that book kind of like shares his, like has parts of his story, like he's in the book, and kind of like everything goes from there. So another book that is similar to this but I didn't like as much is the 10,000 Doors of January by Alex E. Harrow, which also has a girl who can like sort of jump between worlds and discovers a book. This one I think is better. This one has like every element of literary anything as far as like craft and world in it. So it's like its own fairy tale, and there's like tales within this story that he is a part of, and like all of it. I need to reread this actually. I should maybe reread this in the fall. I have other books I need to read, but this, she's so good. So yeah, this is about like another one, sort of like The Magicians, where like the book itself becomes part of the setting, and like The Starless Sea is just very setting magic heavy. So yeah, those are some of my favorite books about magical books. Comment down below and let me know some of your favorites in this genre. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you other guys soon. Bye.